Hello, everyone. My name is Kerry Ramirez. I am the Managing Director of Study Move, and it's a pleasure to connect with you again. This is our first key data update of 2023, and today we're gonna talk about a very interesting topic. We know it's a topic that has been quite important for universities, and a topic that, of course, brings a lot of different angles, different views, and different opinions. And I'm talking about the use of scholarships or the offering of scholarships for new international students to support recruitment strategies. And we have been working in a very extensive analysis of scholarships. We have been collecting data since 2017, and we recently complete our 2023 analysis of scholarships. And because we know this is a very important topic for universities, we thought it was useful for everybody just to get some of the main findings for this year. So it's going to be quite interesting. There is a lot of data that we're hoping it will help us just to get some perspective on how universities are actually offering scholarships and how they're actually implementing the use of scholarships to support their strategies. I'm just gonna share my screen, and while I do that, I'm just gonna remind everybody that we're gonna record this session, and we're gonna share the slides and all the information with each one of you. So you just feel comfortable just to enjoy the session. No need to copy anything because we're gonna share with you all the information. And also, I want to introduce to the co-founder of Study Move, Dimitri Hokel. She is on the chat today. She will be monitoring any questions or comments that you may have. It's great to have Dimitri on the chat because she was the lead analyst for this particular project. So I'm sure that she will gonna be able just to share with you some views or answer some questions that you may have. Okay. We're also going to have time for questions at the end of the presentation, so you also will have that opportunity. And as usual, you can actually feel free to contact us in case you want to just have a direct approach, just to learn more about our reports, but also if you have any particular questions, we're always happy to help. Okay? So as I said, universities, as we all know, have been offering scholarships for to support the recruitment strategies. But there is it's a complex topic and it's a diverse topic because obviously each institution has a different approach towards this particular topic. In many cases, it's because there is a different structure behind it, or in so many cases, it's because there are different objectives that everybody would like to reach as a result of the use of scholarships. So this very, very complex topic is very important for universities because we know that in the last few years, the use of scholarship has increased significantly, but we still need to understand how these different objectives can lead us to identify what works better for everybody. What we all, I think, know at this stage is that there is no magic formula in the use of scholarships. And for that reason, we think it's very useful just to have a good understanding and map what everybody is doing. And that's exactly what we're going to share with you today. It's also very important because the use or the implementation of scholarships is difficult to measure. We know that universities sometimes they have difficulties to see if the efforts to use scholarships are actually assisting them or not to reach those institutional goals that they are aiming for. So what we're trying to do today is just to bring together a general perspective of what's happening in this particular space. And we are very lucky at StudyMove because we have been collecting this data since 2017, which is allowing us just to look in perspective where we at and what happened previously that is taking us to this point where we know universities are actively using scholarships. And we're going to share some of these main findings with each one of you today. Now, what we have done for quite a few years now is that we have been putting together a very, very comprehensive data set of the offering of scholarships that we see across every single Australian universities. And this is really enabling us just to have a better understanding and to map out what we have seen it's in the world of scholarships for across the university sector. What we're going to cover today is using this data that we have been putting together, some of the main findings. And I should say, I'm very thankful with the large number of universities who are showing great support in the use of this scholarship report. So far, we had a very positive feedback in the use of this particular scholarship report. And it's great to see that it's really helping you just to have a better understanding on how to move forward in this particular topic. So today, I'm going to just, first of all, explain a little bit of how we put together this analysis. And I think this is important because there are very different views about what's a scholarship, what is not a scholarship, how it should be used as scholarship. So let me just take a little bit of time to show you how we actually putting together this analysis. And of course, we're actually going to be able just to share some of the main findings of the 2023 report, but also we're going to look back on what happened since 2018 so we can get some perspective of what's happening with this very important topic. And at the end, we'll have a time for questions. In case you have any questions, we'll actually be able to answer it. But as I said, I know that people prefer sometimes just to send us an email. Feel free to do that. Or if you want to share anything at the end of the session, more than happy to take time to answer questions or comments that you may have, because in this particular topic, sometimes we have different views, and it's great just to hear from everybody in regards to what they think is relevant or not to move forward in the use of scholarships here in Australia. All right, starting with our analysis, as I said, we have been collecting this data since 2017. And our approach in the collection of the data is basically looking at the perspective of an international applicant in how they gather this kind of information. So we are basically looking at the different websites and study guides, and based on that, we are actually collecting the data that is available on the public domain. I really appreciate when a university comes and said, oh, don't worry, Kerry, I can send you the Excel with all our scholarships. I really appreciate that. But what we are trying just to see is just to have a look and a better understanding of what international applicants are looking while they're in the journey to identify what university they want to choose to apply. So we have been spending quite a long time in identifying these scholarships based on the information that is available on the public domain. And we are only collecting scholarships that are directly for new international students. For this analysis, we don't consider some of those scholarships or efforts that we know exist for continuing students. This is only the scholarships that are clearly stated that are for new international students, which is linked to the use of scholarships to attract international applicants. And that's why we only concentrate in new international students. We also collect the data that is on the scholarships offered by universities. So we don't collect any data in terms of scholarships offered by foreign governments or external sources. We only look at the scholarships who are actually offered by universities. And the numbers that you're going to see today are based on only scholarships who are offered by universities here in Australia. For this particular report, we actually exclude some of the scholarships available for research and study abroad, simply because they are very different. In study abroad, there are a lot of direct discounting, and with research, we know it's very different the way in which universities support their applicants. So we only look at scholarships for new international students offered by university for undergraduate and postgraduate coursework programs. And for this particular analysis, we include the complete set of efforts. We include merit-based scholarships, bursaries, awards, fee waivers, like all of them, all the different efforts that actually are used to support or to support your student recruitment strategies. And this is because every university calls them in a different way. And just to simplify the analysis, we all put them together and we call it scholarship programs, just for the purpose of to simplify the analysis. But when you see the numbers that I'm going to present, it's basically all the different types of scholarships, merit-based and all that and so on, okay? All right. So after we collect all the data, and that takes quite a bit of time, I think it's important that we spend, and this is what we do, a lot of time, we spend a lot of time in categorizing this information just to make it relevant. We categorize the information just to see what type of a scholarship it is, if it's a merit base, or if it's just a fee waiver or a discount, or is this all different types of scholarships. We also identify if the scholarship is for a country, it has a country specific nature, which means that the scholarship is only for citizens or residents for particular markets. We also look if the scholarship, it goes only for the specific discipline areas. We actually, for the first time this year, have been doing an effort just to identify if each scholarship program is what we can call a flagship. We noticed that in the last years, universities are implemented like main scholarship programs that they used to go in market. And in fact, it's clearly, when you actually see at the website, it's like, okay, this is the main scholarship program that they're actually using. So we actually tick if it's what we call a flagship scholarship. And of course, we look at many other things like the actual value of the scholarship and the terms and conditions and all the relevant information, so we can actually get a good analysis and a good sense of what's the offering that we have for international students in the area of a scholarship across all the Australian universities. Okay. And then from there, of course, we just move into the analysis. And this is when things get quite interesting. This year in particular, we identified that across all Australian universities, there are 573 scholarship programs available to international students. Now, what I think is interesting about this number, because it really doesn't mean anything, is when we actually look at the story of this particular metric. And this number for 2023 compares quite interestingly with the numbers that we saw before COVID, 2018 and 2019. And it has been very useful for us that we have been collecting this data for quite a long time, so we can actually tell the story of what has been the evolution on the use of scholarships. Because what happened here in Australia is that at the moment that we had to deal with the difficulties and the challenges of COVID-19, this is when we saw a spike in the number of scholarships, reaching 632 scholarships programs in 2021. In 2022, we saw a small decline. This is when we saw that universities start to adjust and probably withdraw a little bit in the more active use of a scholarship. And now we're in 573, which is heading to the numbers that we had in 2019. Now, an important comparison is also how many universities are using scholarships, because back in 2018, it was about 93%. We always had 4 or 3 universities that actually did not use any scholarships, institutional scholarships at all. In fact, I remember some of the websites, they actually had a very clear statement of saying, we do not offer scholarships because we think that our fees represent the value of our program, so we don't go there. Well, that changed during COVID. And now in 2023, even though we have a smaller number of scholarship programs in comparison to 2021 and 2022, nowadays, every single Australian university offers at least one, in fact, it's more than one scholarship program to attract new international students. So what we are seeing here is that the use of a scholarship remained active in 2023, but it seems that universities are modifying or tuning the use of a scholarship. And that's something that we are going to show in the next couple of slides. Now, also something that is very interesting, and because we have the data, we can actually look into this, is at the use of fee waivers. This is something that we notice clearly increased significantly during the time of COVID. And I think this is when the conversation and the discussions that we have about scholarships, they need to be put in perspective. In 2022, we looked at a lot of universities, actually, they said, I really need to do something. There's not a lot that I can do from a marketing point of view because I cannot do in-country direct marketing. The borders were closed. So that's when a lot of universities move to offer basically automatic fee waivers. In some cases, to every single student will get a fee waiver. And that was a natural reaction, and to be honest, a very reasonable reaction to the difficult situation that we had during 2020 and all the way to 2022 in a way. In some cases, also these fee waivers, they were not really just to react to the market or to attract market share. It was to compensate to some students who were unable to have the on-campus experience. And I think also that was a reasonable statement done for the universities. And I think, in fact, the market actually reacted quite nicely to that particular discounting. But this use of fee waivers has changed now in 2023. And let me show you how this has changed. This year, we were able to classify each one of these scholarship programs in different categories. And these 573 scholarship programs that we have this year, when you actually look them by the different types of scholarship, they look like this. As you can see, fee waivers are only now 7% of the total number of scholarship available. So we have dramatically moved away from that particular way of introducing scholarships. And what universities are doing a lot more is merit-based scholarships. In fact, 75% of the scholarships that we collect this year are merit-based. What I think is also interesting, and I know this is part of the discussion that everybody's having, is that yes, they are merit-based, but what kind of merit applicants required to get the scholarship? Sometimes, in my opinion, they are very low, the merits that to obtain the scholarship. That's a different discussion. But in the way the universities are actually offering or packaging that scholarship is with this merit-based kind of framework. Now, 35 out of 40, so the vast majority of universities are actually using or offering merit-based scholarships. Different to only 14 out of 40. So as you can see, we are withdrawing on the use of fee waivers. That doesn't mean that everybody has to do this, but I'm just trying to share some of the main trend that we see for this particular year. And I think that's a very important thing that I would like to highlight. I'm not saying that some things are better than others, because it really depends on the institutional goal and the institutional views that everybody has. Some universities may continue using fee waivers for a few more years because that works for them, it's part of the structure. But what I'm just trying to bring is some perspective and saying that what we have seen this year is that we are moving away from the fee waiver world into more of a merit-based scholarship. And as you can see, the vast majority of universities, 35 out of 40 universities, are actually using this particular model of scholarships. Now, I'm just going to leave the definitions of how we categorize this here. There is no need to read it. You can see it later when you actually get the slides. But we put a lot of effort just to create this classification. But that's something that we understand it could change in the next year when we receive additional feedback of how we can actually classify these. But at the moment, we feel very comfortable in the way in which we classify these scholarships, and is helping us just to have a better understanding on mapping where are we heading for the next few years, and definitely in this 2023. Now, apart from this move on merit-based scholarships, something that we noticed also this year is that we have seen an increase in the use of country-specific scholarships. And in fact, this particular year, 2023, we identified that 60% of Australian universities have now a country-specific scholarship. Now, once again, going back 4 years ago, this is a similar number to what we had before COVID. Before COVID, we noticed that a lot of the scholarship efforts were just to target a specific market. And the targeting of a specific market, it could be from a pricing position point of view, but it could be a nature of a particular market where scholarships is something that is required to operate in that particular market. We know that countries like India are actually scholarship-driven kind of markets. So that's something that we saw happen during COVID, before COVID, sorry. During COVID, we saw a decline in country-specific scholarships, and now in 2023, we've seen again that this number is rising again, and universities are moving away slightly from offering a scholarship for every citizen in the world to now really be more specific and to tune and create direction or where they want to put those scholarships to reach their own institutional goals. In 2023, these are the top markets with country-specific scholarships. And I don't think there's a surprise when we see India in the number one. Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, they have always been in the top 10 on the number of country-specific scholarships. Sri Lanka is one that is actually increasing and reaching the top 5. Now, two very interesting findings when we look into this. The number one is China. China was always in the top 5 in the number of universities putting scholarships towards this market. In 2023, they are not on the top 5. Also, that's something that may change in the next couple of months. And also, I think this is something that we need to talk about it because none of these markets, and this has been the case for quite a long time, are what I will call diversity markets. So I think that also sometimes I hear that there is this narrative that scholarships are actually a way to increase diversity. Probably it is, but at the moment, most of the scholarships offer are not, but the country-specific scholarships are not necessarily for diversity markets. The only one that is in the top 10 and is as a region is Latin America, which is in the top 10. But besides that, most of the countries that actually are receiving the larger amount of scholarships are some of our traditional top markets. And once again, we actually saw a larger number of institutions heading into these directions. For India, 6 more universities in comparison to 2022. Now in 2023, 6 more are offering country-specific. So India was already on the top of the majority of universities offering scholarships. Now 6 more, which is a very, very big jump. And you can see the same trend for Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and a little bit by Sri Lanka. So very interesting to see also this move of, once again, moving away from a large fee waiver for everybody to concentrating into a country-specific scholarship, looking for, I think, the markets that, for whatever reason, are important for universities, but that's where we are heading nowadays. Okay? Now, just briefly, and of course, our analysis and our report includes a lot more information, but I really want just to share some of the main aspects with it. What we really, at the end of the day, we have seen is that this 2023, the active use of scholarships will continue. Although we saw a small decline in the number of scholarship programs, now every single university is offering these scholarships. So it seems that we are actually now in a period of tuning and to thinking how these scholarships actually are gonna assist or not institution in the recruitment efforts. Clearly, we notice that we are moving away from this fee waiver structure into more of the merit-based scholarships. And once again, I think that it could be questionable for everybody or for some people who don't like the scholarship is where universities are placing this merit. Sometimes the merit to obtain a scholarship is with very low GPAs. In some others is completely different. That's why looking at the detail of the scholarship is very important. But overall, we are definitely moving into a more of a merit-based scholarship system. And definitely, we are also moving in the direction of country-specific scholarships. And on this, I should mention that we always notice that there is a group of universities who they are not looking into country-specific scholarships. What they are doing instead, because they don't do country specifics, they do a faculty specific or discipline specific scholarships, which is an interesting approach. And, I still would like to understand why they go one direction or other. It could be simply the structure of the university where faculties are in charge of implementing these scholarships. But the different view on how you can direct your scholarship program, it shows how complex and diverse the world of scholarships is. Okay? Now, On that, and this is all a 2023 kind of a story, and even looking before. But the big question that I think we all have is what's going to happen probably in 2024. And what's going to happen, because what we are looking at in the market at the moment, it's a very impressive growth on the demand for international programs here in Australia. This is one of the latest charts that we have, and I think it shows the impressive demand that we are facing for 2023. And this is going to create some questions on how universities are going to implement or not scholarships in the following months, maybe talking about more 2024 probably. But as you can see, in the second half of last year, the number of student visas granted for higher education had an impressive growth. We went way beyond before COVID times. We were 36% more than back in 2019. And I should highlight that 2019 was an incredibly good year for the international education sector in Australia. Like, it was an impressive growth. Things were actually in the peak of actually what we have seen historically. Well, now we are 36% above those numbers, which is clearly showing that market conditions have changed very positively for the rest of 2023. And I have the impression that also for 2024, which brings that big question to universities on how or if they're gonna remain the use or keep using scholarships. And that's the big question. And that's when I think we also need to concentrate the conversation, but also understanding that not every single university is going to follow the same path, simply because everybody has a very different type of scholarship programs. And I think the conversation should be based on that, based on understanding that it's a complex and direct topic. But something that we really need to work on is on measuring the results and the return on investment on these scholarships. I think that's what is going to be key to understand if we are actually doing the right thing or heading into the right direction, or it's a need to withdraw or to modify some of the scholarship programs. For example, I know that some universities, they are introducing scholarships just to create brand awareness in new markets, or new markets for them probably. But it seems that we haven't been able really just to measure if this effort really works. And, as any other effort, I think it's very, very important that we look if this particular effort, let's say to create brand awareness, is giving us the results. For example, measuring if this use of a scholarship is creating brand awareness through media mentions or additional social media posts or additional leads. So we really need to close that cycle and really need to make the effort just to measuring the results. And I know that sometimes that's hard, but that's the only way that I think universities are going to be able just to tune more effectively their use of scholarships under this very, very complex and diverse topic. I think also the data that we collect shows that we need to go beyond this narrative of scholarships are good or bad. It really depends on what institutions are aiming for. And for example, we know that some scholarships from our very well-ranked universities are looking for the most talented applicants in the world. And sometimes there is criticism of how these very well-ranked universities are using scholarships at all, like how they don't have resources. Well, it's a different type of a scholarship. Sometimes when you are trying to attract the best of the best in terms of the applicants with high academic requirements, they obviously are, competing against universities like Harvard or Stanford or Oxford. So they actually need to do something. So it's not a good or a bad. It's really looking at what everybody is doing for a particular aim or purposes. And I think if we move away from that narrative, it will be easier just to understand where are we heading and what really works or not. Also, I think that there is a lot of FOMO in this particular topic, the fear of missing out. And this is something that I know that universities are telling us that our report is very useful because they can really see what clearly everybody is doing. And instead of getting whispers of hearing, oh, these people are doing this or these people this, they can actually have a better understanding of what's happening. And I think that is something that we need to look more carefully, not trying to overreact, especially now that market conditions are improving. And finally, and that's something that I have been saying through this presentation, it's all about understanding that everybody has a different international perspective. I know that sometimes this topic of scholarships creates, I don't know, it creates a little bit of difficult sense across competitors, just because you don't want to see that your competitor across the road suddenly in the last minute puts out 50% scholarship and takes everything that you have done away. I know that, but overall, it seems that we are moving away from that. And I think institutions are actually looking at their own perspective. There is work to be done, and I'm sure there is work to be done on this particular area, but I think it's important just to understand that everybody has a different perspective. And in order to obtain perspective, this is when we are very, very happy with all the data that we have been collecting. And once again, thank you for everybody who has been supporting the development of this, because when you have the complete picture, this is when you can really understand where you are and had more meaningful conversation across your institution, just to tune your scholarship strategy. So I hope that this brief presentation is useful. As you can see, the aim was just to share with you some of the main findings, some of the main trends. But in this particular topic, definitely it's important just to look at the detail and what everybody's aiming for. But in order to get perspective, I think it's important just to get the details of that. And yeah, that's all for now. And in case somebody has any questions, I'm just gonna stop sharing. Great. Well, thank you so much once again for your time. I hope you find this useful. It's quite a very interesting and complex topics, I know. And I think that for that reason, it has been useful just to look into the general trends, but also invite you just to look into more of the detail and understand that I insist, everybody has a different view, a different approach. And for that reason, it's not very useful just to say scholarships are bad or good, just per se. I think that's important just to get some perspective into that. All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to be in touch with you with the slides. And once again, if you have any more questions, more than happy just to get in touch with you. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a good time. And we'll be connecting with you very soon. See ya.